which is a Tuesday. It's about 5:30 Mountain Time, actually a little bit after that. But in Hawaii, it's about 1:30 Mountain Time. We're joining you from a particular location where a conference is being held, but it's a closed conference, yet it's a conference for government-based activities, which for those of you in the US, if you've ever sat on a nonprofit or any kind of governmental ecosystem, they have a thing called the open meetings law, so to speak, and it's basically how things happen, which we'll go through here in a second. But first, we're grateful for those that are joining us to review an update this last week and then provide general questions, as there's a lot of moving parts currently. I'm grateful for those that are helping us from remote. Terrence, Elle, Wally, thank you for being here, and thank you for all that you do, not just on Tuesdays, but every day of the week, except for Sundays. This is a private membership association, and some of the things we'll talk about, maybe look forward-looking statements, primarily going over a model where decentralization is enabled by really connecting up what we call access devices or phones. I think people use them more for accessing systems or applications and taking photos than they do the phone side of it, but we'll call it phones, and then how that connects into decentralized storage. The model is pretty simple. You know, on one hand, you've got a device that runs apps and services and authenticates based upon the individual owning their own data and their own keys into a decentralized system. So it's an architecture in the technology world that's different, but and we may say, well, why are we in a location that really looks like a resort, looks like a place of peace and tranquility and rest and vacation. And for those that have been paying attention, things have been happening on not just in Hawaii as the islands of Hawaii, but particularly on the island of Maui and in the city of Lahaina. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. If you've joined the last 2, maybe 3 events, you've seen details around that. 3 events ago, I was over at Pearl Harbor and talked a lot about how kind of things are shifting and how the Second World War actually started there, but also kind of likened how the Third World War, maybe it's already started and maybe it'll be fought in a very different way. So we touched on pieces of that, but this particular piece of land that's actually behind me that you can see, as well as in this photo, is a very sacred piece of land. And many years ago, I came here with my family, primarily to play on this little beach over here. There's a nice little place for lunch and such. And we got to understand why this hedge was up. And you can kind of see another separate hedge that's gone in its place here, and another stone that basically identifies. Well, when you look at what's kind of transpired since the day that we arrived, they put in things like this. And if you notice, there's a particular thing here that talks about, you know, the state, and under a House bill where they basically can prosecute for certain things. And this particular thing is a door, as well as a sacred land where not just this week, but a couple weeks ago when we were first getting started, some of the individuals that actually are stewards over this land welcomed us in. They welcomed us into a very special part of this area where certain things, communication. And so for those of you that are here, we talk a little bit about life and creator, and we talk a lot about kind of how it applies in humanity. And some of the words that at least when we talk about a word in the world of prayer, we also talk about this thing called quantum entanglement and how it all kind of links together through generations, or at least through the ability to have generations of time be able to connect with one another. I know a lot of this may sound weird and it may sound different, but we actually, about 10 days ago, went onto this land and we communicated with individuals that were still here, with souls that were still here, because hundreds had passed from here just days prior. And this was a process that many go through to say either goodbye to spirits that have left the body but are still here. But this land is a very sacred and special land, not just from how communication can occur and spirits that are in the ground or bodies that are in the ground that spirits have left, but it's a connection between the earth and life and generations. And really, for those of you that believe in the spiritual world, for me personally, I believe and know that we came as spirits here on earth before we were born. There's a process of procreation and life that physically creates a body, but we are spirits here. And while we're here, we can understand some of that, but most of it's been forgotten. And then when we take our last breath, we'll also be spirits as we pass from this earth. And the world may have a lot of noise while we're in it, but to be honest with you, there's a massive amount of peace that can come from connecting with spirits while we're in the physical body, especially as society kind of throws these curveballs at us, whether it's media, with in the education side of the world. So it's not just, I don't know about you, but I really remember learning certain things in school, and a lot of it wasn't just about learning how to spell or how to read or what math was, but how geography worked, namely my own country, the country of the United States of America. And I remember being one of the things that was just pushed on me was the number 50. And I didn't understand then what I look back and recollect now. Whereas in the education world, which now is not just in the schools or in classrooms, and the content has changed massively from what they were teaching back in those days around 50 states to now, the content, and I won't even start to talk about the content that is in the schools. But media, education, COVID and health, climate, and Agenda 21, which is a massive topic in the Pacific where we are, election fraud, trafficking, and surveillance. And some would argue it's not just surveillance, but it's money in addition. And so these things may be confusing, but in all reality, if we kind of look at life from a standpoint of we're going to take a last breath, and the time that we spend here on this earth actually matters, and some of the things that we do, and it's not just always looking for the bad and the good, but also being realistic around what's going on. And it's not that we have to say, hey, these people within these secret combinations, whether people believe them or not, are doing right by humanity or not, or they're good people or not. In all reality, we're spirits in physical bodies, and all of us are here to have choice. And it's the taking away of the choice that really has a massive concern for future generations. And what I mean by that is these secret combinations in different ecosystems, whether it's technology or media or health, can definitely and emphatically influence government. And we've seen that in past elections, not just within America, but within South America, within Europe, within Brazil, within specifically, we'll hear a lot about what happened in New Zealand. They use the same Dominion voting systems as in America and many other countries. But that technology, and not just technology like Dominion on the voting side, but also technology is in algorithms. And so, for instance, when you do a search, what pops up first? There's a lot of studies that have actually come out. They've had the time to actually come out and prove that from 66% to 70% of a persuasion can actually occur depending on which technology is used. When these surveys were originally taken, Google was one of the top search engines. You had other things like, Bing and Yahoo. But since then, we've had other systems, kind of like these, that have popped out. Let's see here. This is actually shifted here as well. So you're familiar with your own favorite search engine, so to speak. Actually, I'll pull it up. Let's see if I can pull up. Nah, it's not going to pull up the example. But DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo is an open source alternative to a Google engine on the technology or big tech side that doesn't have the same level of persuasion. And so it's really easy to identify what technology companies are basically providing truth. And truth and light is important, especially when we're talking about secret combinations. And so examples of that is how other parts of the world basically have public combinations that are being affected based upon private things that are going on within these secret combinations. For those that are paying attention, this last week, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates joined the BRICS, which is going to directly be a counterbalance to what's going on with the IMF and the World Bank. For me personally, that's an interesting advancement because I've actually spent literally the last, I've spent the last almost 9 months, about 4 weeks of that not out in the Pacific, but the last 9 months within the Pacific Ocean. This represents meeting with 19 different countries, and there were 3 different countries that are actually rolling out the technology. But we walked right in to where the IMF and many others, namely the IMF, you can kind of see on the anybody that's got, no, it's not accurate, but these are people just like us, and do they know that they're doing a will that may be taking away the choice of another? That's to be determined. Do they? Well, I guess it's based upon who they are. And I can tell you, some of these people are good people in their core, but they don't understand the work that they're doing as they're doing it. I can also see it. I mean, you go to the DMV and you do different systems that are centralized, and people just think it's a normal course of life. But the point that I'm trying to drive at is these different countries are all basically being consolidated into one ecosystem. And people may not agree with that or understand it or see it, but it's really a simple process that's actually happening. And it does surface within these different ecosystems that we brought up here. What's an alternative to it? And you'll find, for those that are new, that the Clear companies have helped to build decentralized systems and then stand up what was called the digital world. And the digital world then enables different countries and nations to stand up. They can stand up on their own, and it's independent, truly decentralized and truly independent of centralized systems. That can be good and it can be bad, but the key is the choice is the individuals, not the power in the central few that control the choices of the many. So basically a model that takes decentralized systems and applies it to centralized systems in parallel is really what a lot of this work is about. And the fine balance is to be able to find a really a line in the middle where government and freedom can actually find a balance. And centralization and decentralization is one of those particular ways. It's a beautiful time. It's also maybe a frightening time for those that just watch social media or watch different indicators. Some of the biggest indicators is probably your own checking account, and where we see funds that literally get utilized faster, primarily because we see inflation and the cost of everything going up. It's a part of the plan. Remember, if this model right here, if these governments are actually controlled by these ecosystems, for instance, let's say that a presidency was not elected, it was selected, and people that selected them could say, hey, you're going to do this, or please do that, or make this happen, where money can just be created out of nothing. What that means is all of these different systems can fund other systems, whether it's funding schools or funding health or funding government. They can fund how things actually occur. And when that happens, you see turmoil. And I won't go into all the details of what's happening on this particular island. Many of you already are aware of it. But on this island, particularly on some sacred ground, where the capital of the Hawaiian Islands were, they called them the Sandwich Islands before. And Hawaii was just one of the islands. I'm going to mute that. I'll jump down here. Hawaii was just one of the islands. So this particular island, the big island of Hawaii, is just one of them. But imagine if they continued forward and 126 years ago, they weren't oppressed and separated and divided and stolen from. What would actually happen today? How would it look? And so the goal is really to leverage decentralized systems and technology to enable a type of nation to rise up. And that nation may look like what you're seeing here on a map. It may have one ecosystem, whether that's a kingdom or whether that's a nation, or whether that's one united flag for all of them, or if they're broken into states. So Hawaii, Maui, Oahu, Kauai become states with their own state capitals and systems. This last week, we'd like to report that a system has been stood up that basically enables management of back-end systems for users that would come into it. And why would that be important? So imagine 4,000 people losing their home, losing their documentation. Maybe it's a birth certificate, maybe it's a marriage certificate, maybe it's the death certificate of a loved one, maybe it's an insurance policy, maybe it's so if you can imagine overnight 4,000 people's lives being turned upside down, they're told, hey, if you go over here, you can get food. If you go over here, you can get shelter. If you go over here, you can get money. Oh, but the money comes with some strings. You have to be able to prove that you can pay it back. You have to pay it back. And you have to be able to know who you are. But if your thing's up, how do you do any of those? You just do the basics around shelter and food and nutrition and life and keeping your spirits up. I can tell you this last week was probably one of the most spiritual weeks of at least the last couple decades of my life, primarily because of the people and the example that they are, not just the individuals that have been on this ripple effect and town hall meeting, but the people that I'm bumping into along the way, the people that are examples of humility, of losing their pride, losing their ego, not being greedy. The government of the United States of America has taken all of this, all of these lands, and they've done with it what they will. This little island right here, it's full of bombs and mines. This island right here, a lot of the people that are sick of the way that they've been treated, they go live there off the land. But then they pull in organizations like Bayer Pharmaceutical and Monsanto's to not only modify seeds that are gifts to humans and all living things, but to literally pervert the land. Over on this island, it's not just things on fire, but you have mosquitoes that are genetic and set into knowing what repercussions are going to happen, not just to the habitat or to the fowl in the air or to humans, but they're playing with science just like we did in Wuhan, just like we did not just with COVID. COVID's not the first time that vaccinating a generation or a type of people, specifically an indigenous people, is the first time that they can't have babies when they go away. When they grow up, sterilization of a generation and a people have become reality. COVID is not the first time that this has happened. But you see it, a lot of the things that they're doing at the cellular layer, not just, so we're sitting on this island here, so you're seeing it in insects. Over here, you're seeing it in seeds, in plants, and how they graft them together and how they get them to grow. So it's not just a war that on the prior 2 or 3 meetings ago, we were on Oahu at particularly Pearl Harbor, where the first attack happened on the United States of America, which put America into the Third World War. But I believe that the war that we're fighting, the attack on the individual, the attack on the family, and the attack on this earth, is actually not just missiles flying or bombs being dropped or planes reaming with a machine gun shooting at people and cars and whatever else. But it's a very different attack. It's an attack like we talked about up here, that is actually on society. It's on the mind. It's on the spirit. I've had a couple conversations with people about money, and it's not even. I don't even think it's about money. Yes, we have to have money to exist in life, but there's a lot of lessons that can be learned by having money and not having money, both good and bad. But imagine a country that actually stands up, and they create their own money. They create their own destiny. They create their own records, whether it's a document that doesn't provide a digital surname and you have to scan it in certain ways, whether it's an ID. Imagine the ability to say, hey, I want to create a business, or I want to buy an asset, and I want to register that asset, and I want to drive that asset, and I want it to be free and sovereign, and I want it to be for future generations that I may pass down from generation to generation. So it's been very, very eye-opening to be able to just kind of see what's happening in real time. What's happening is very sad to see, particularly this venue that I'm sitting at on the other side of where we are is actually a meeting that's going on right this second and has been for hours. It's a meeting of Maui County and trying to figure out how they make right things that have been wrong. And in the governmental ecosystem, there's certain processes and policies that are supposed to be followed. Now, that's a governmental ecosystem of the United States of America. That's not the ecosystem of Hawaii. Hawaii, and it's been very eye-opening for me to see, when you want to go and talk to someone, it's not just a matter of finding their home or finding their email or finding their phone number, but specifically when you go to their place where they physically are, maybe their home, maybe their shelter, even one shelter that we went to, you ask for a right to go in. You ask for a right to be heard. And once you are, you truly are, you're welcomed in. But it's a process, not an assumption. And I would say that it's been the opposite on how Hawaii as an island, as a set of islands, as a nation, as a people, as an indigenous people, have been treated, and many others. I mean, the Kunas, the Chickasaws, the Cherokees, the Maoris, the Fijians. These are cultures that have been oppressed and they've been treated as second class. Maybe it's because of a color of their skin tone is different than others, but it's really sad to see on one hand, but on the other hand, when you dig into society, at least for me, I've found that these people are very, not just prideless or their egos are gone, but they're humble and they're kind and they're loving. Just like what you would see in Hawaii when you understand aloha and what that means. I'm starting to learn pieces of it, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to help others to be able to see this and experience it. But it's not going to be in the short term. This is going to take a long time to actually get deployed. As a matter of fact, someone yesterday said, Mike, I really believe in this decentralized stuff that you talk about all the time. I really believe that I've seen the transactions, I've seen the systems. This individual works in software. He says, but Mike, do you really think it's going to get adopted? And I said to him, and I've said this to many of you, if we take time out of the equation, anything is possible. And I said to him, what if we feverishly work like we're working every day for 10 years? Do you think it would get adopted? Do you think it would be trusted? The technology is trustworthy. How people use technology is what needs to be trained and taught and deployed in the appropriate way. And I really believe that the individual can actually stand up and the family can be strengthened because of it, as a byproduct of using a true and correct principle such as decentralization, taking the power of the few and giving it to the many. Literally just 100 feet away from me is a meeting that, even though we've dedicated so much to helping to build an ecosystem, I'll log in here real fast. To helping to build an ecosystem that delivers valuable offerings like these. So imagine homes that are able to be built here on Maui within 120 days. A factory can go up. Let me see if I've got. See if I've got an example of that. This might not be the right. Yeah, it is. So imagine a factory that goes up within 120 days, and then imagine an ecosystem. Let's see if we've got another slide here. Imagine an ecosystem that can actually be built out. This particular location for 940 people, but if you go and take these types of quality built homes that are pre-manufactured homes, you teach people how to actually make their own home, and then what do they need? They need land to put it on. So imagine not just boxable units or shared ecosystems like you're camping, but homes that are actually good quality homes, whether they're 450 square feet all the way up to 1,550 square feet. And there's two more models that we're currently working on that we'll be able to announce. And it's not just homes; it's also you can do stackable condominium type stuff as well. But imagine where they have basically $1 per month per square foot, so about $1,500 a month. Now that would be dollars within a new nation that has its own ability. I'll go ahead and wait again. Its own ability. I'll just let you kind of soak this in, so to speak. Its own ability to actually exist and create its own system. So right now, in particularly in Maui, the export is actually people. The import is actually tourists. So tourists have the ability to come to each one of these little islands and say, I'm going to spend money because I'm going to relax on a beach and maybe drink a syrup-based pina colada, versus we're going to provide value on this island. Maybe it's nuts, maybe it's coconuts, maybe it's sugar, maybe it's actually homes. Maybe it's homes with a purpose that are built for a particular region. Namely, we all talk about kind of what the digital world has been focused on as a particular region, and this region actually was within the Pacific. So I don't know if you remember, but before this map was created, we came to Hawaii and we went to every one of the states of the United States of America, the particular islands that were there, and they weren't ready for decentralization. We met with 4 or 5 amazing people. They signed the Declaration of Unity. They understood it. It resonated with them, but the rest of the people were not ready for it. So we moved on. We went to Fiji. We went to Vanuatu. We went to Tuvalu and many other countries, sovereign-based countries. So Tonga, Samoa, these countries and the people therein have hearts that will do the right things. And money is not the first thing. So a lot of the power from these central secret combinations, they won't have massive power because these cultures can actually run independent from a life standpoint. They can grow their own food. They can catch their own food. They have their homes and they're comfortable because they don't have to deal with a lot of the deep winters and the hot summers. So they don't have to have the same structures. But the issue is the structures that they have, when a cyclone comes through, they go away many of the time, especially if they're grass built and those types of things. But imagine structures where the costing is not crazy expensive, but they're cyclone proof, they're fireproof, and they're termite proof. So a lot of the things that we're currently seeing within a risky ecosystem like those countries I mentioned, Tuvalu, Vanuatu, Fiji, they get cyclones. I would argue that one of the things that actually came here um, was fire, but what actually fueled the fire was wind. And with no alarms and with no water, once a fire truck plug pulls up to it, you're in for a catastrophe. And that's what really is creates an opportunity for many to be able to rebuild from and to create a future that is actually beautiful. And I know the future may come from a lot of different perspectives or different views, and there's lots of different people that will show up in different ways. But um, the goal is to not only provide homes, because that's not a core competency for any of the clear ecosystems, but to provide abilities for identity within the home ecosystem. So, how do you actually purchase a home? How do you do it in such a way that you're not profiled? You can prove your identity, you can prove your income, but you don't have to be a part of the centralized credit systems. You don't have to be a part of the centralized ID systems. You don't have to go and have cash flow a certain way so that you can verify whether you're actually qualifying for other assistance programs, which actually, in and of themselves, keep people down. You know, what's been eye opening to me is I talked to a gal today and many others, and they're just struggling to get a basic one-time $700 payment when their home burnt down per household. I mean, the reality for that type of construct is just inappropriate. But so I hope you understand some of the pieces and next steps that are basically coming around. And it's not just within the building of or the rebuilding of the ecosystem, but the ability to be able to have a sovereign country that is independent, that stands up for what it wants and for the real, not just for when we talk about the people, but for the many, not just centralized few. So over the next week, you'll see some interesting advancements. You'll see some interesting changes. You'll see some interesting people that will come together and help to stand up in unity. And that's another big thing that is a reality here is, you know, there's a lot of history that many have to slow down and understand. There's a lot of context and a lot of different forces that have to come together as one so that many can not only just stand up together, but they can actually lock arms together. And they can do it in a very freeing way, a way that doesn't have to change a lot of how we live in society. So we live in homes, we pay bills, we communicate with certain devices, but how do we do that in a way that's actually unified? And so those are some of the parts and pieces that we've been able to put a couple pieces together this last week and continue the kind of the advancement for. So with that being said, I'll pause and anyone can have any kind of question, feedback, thought. The time is now yours. Feel free to go wherever you want to go with it. I'll turn the volume up here. Go ahead. That's okay. We're just wrapping up with Q&A. So thank you though. Anyone? Now's your time. We've been asked to leave.
Hey, Michael, it's Beck.
Hello.
Hey, I just thought I'd throw something out there. You know, I'm all for this decentralization system. And in terms of our government at the moment,
Mike,
you know,
I
it's
do
kind of
want to
like
say
if we
I
just
appreciate
wait
all that
around
you
for
put
them
into
to do
Maui and
something,
what you're doing.
nothing's going to happen, you know?
Hold on just a quick second, because there's different rooms, so there's a couple different people talking at the same time. Charles, I'm going to come right to you in just a second, okay? Beck, go ahead and wrap up your thought, and then we'll go over to Charles.
I was just saying, if we wait around for, you know, our government.
You broke up. Start over. Maybe it's on my side. I'm streaming this off of a phone today. I think it was on her side. She's gone mute.
Yeah, we can hear Becca.
Becca, we lost you. I saw you come off mute and on mute, but we lost you. So what we'll do is we'll go to Charles real fast, and then we'll come back over. Charles, go ahead, bud.
Well, I just want to say, I want to thank you for all that you're doing on Maui and all the selfless things that you're doing. It's fascinating and mind-boggling at the same time. So thank you.
Grateful for the opportunity to be here and to serve and to love and to feel of the aloha. And to be honest with you, I personally am gaining more than I could ever imagine. So, but thank you, Charles. And thank you for all that you do to help make this happen, because to be honest with you, the advancements that have occurred at the pace that they've occurred at would have never happened if you didn't see it. And you were one of the first ones, you and Kelly, her connecting you, and then what you've connected into. And the goal is to do it in such a way where we do it, we really all lock arms. Even though we may have different opinions and perspectives, it's been very interesting to see how it's gone from hand to hand to hand. And your hand in the middle of it will change generations of time. I truly believe that. And it will impact generations to come. So thank you, Charles. We'll go back over to the other room. Becca, if you've solved your audio issues, you're welcome to go.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you now. Go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say, if we wait around for our governments to do something, nothing's going to happen. So I think, this whole build back better thing, we need to build back even better than ever before, And I think what this is like decentralization coming over centralization. And then maybe, I don't think we should underestimate what can happen in 10 years if we were all really just kind of put our heads together. I don't think we should underestimate what we can achieve in 10 years' time, even though it might take time. But I do believe that this is the way forward. And in terms of like centralization, CBDCs, I think people start understanding that there are parallel ecosystems that can be adopted when CBDCs slowly come in. I mean, I know in Australia, they've got another 12-month trial of CBDCs starting soon. And I think that when people start seeing that, they'll start looking for alternatives. So, I just thought I'd
when they start seeing some of the ways that centralized systems really limit the control of the individual and control them.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
And I just don't think we can have this one system anymore, Like we need other systems. Like technology is here for us to be creative with it, And I think we can connect now more than ever before. And decentralization, innovation as well, bringing people together to co-create is going to be something that's exciting too. So yeah, I mean, I'm all for this decentralization, and I just want to get it going already. Come on, guys.
We're doing everything we can every day to continue it, to move forward. And I know you see that. And your words are appreciated, and your support is appreciated. So thank you very much. And you're right. I came to this meeting today here to try and understand what is being done, because everything that I see is just failure everywhere. From $700 per family, or even if it's an individual, even if it's $700 a week per family, that's still not even enough to help so they continue to have a quality of life. And it's not just a matter of people getting money, it's a matter of systems actually adding value. And that's why building an actual factory that creates homes and communities to rebuild this amazing island and this amazing nation, to then have an export for it, it's a massive opportunity. And what's important is it won't be Clear Homes that actually does it. It'll be the Hawaiian people that do it, and they'll own their own factory. They'll own their own jobs. they'll build their own houses, and then they'll actually export that. They can build up to 2 to 6 homes per day within these new factories. So when you really, and not only that, but they can build, when I say factories, I'm talking particularly about this one here. And sits on just an acre of ground. It's not huge. But the ability to layer it in with existing developments and people and cultures, it's been eye-opening to see the land developers that do or do not want to work with things that are of the future, and to see how many folks just want to plug into a smart community. I want to give a kind of a reminder that today is the 5th, and in 20 days from today, the 25th, we'll have the opportunity. We've actually not only been re-invited to the Hawaiian Digital Government Summit, which when they watched one of these podcasts, whatever we want to call this, they uninvited me after I was already attending. And now they've re-invited me and asked me to actually give a keynote speech over government and identity. And, when decentralization becomes a very serious alternative because it's simpler, it's easier for the user. Most of the user issues in the world, you know what they are? They're login credentials, username and passwords. For those of you that use a ClearPhone and you log in, it's like, oh, I got to log in, pull it up, click, scan, I'm in. And there's no questions about it. It's very easy. It's very telling. So that becoming a reality in the technology world around identity, and then you have a system that can actually verify who you are and prove who you are, but not give away privacy, but still provide transparency. I'm convinced that when that type of a system layers on top of what they're trying to do with these 15-minute cities, because the digital ecosystems will come. The new cities will come, as wrong as they are or as different as they are. But if we have an option to be able to own our own data and our own identity, and we're in control of it, we're in control of our votes, we're in control of our assets, we're in control of our wills, we're in control of our choices, that's a future that is worth fighting for, even if it means life is different and it won't ever be the same. Life is about progression. Life is about, really, as I'm learning here in Hawaii, it's about aloha and love and kindness and caring and giving and sharing and removing ego, removing pride, and removing greed. We have more than we could ever ask for in this world. I don't know how many times you've slowed down to just taste different tastes or smell different smells or see different colors, but these simple gifts that we all take for granted. There's a wonderful magician that I've started to get acquainted with. His name is Dallin, and he's blind. He was blind at birth, and you'll see some things that'll happen over the next couple weeks that will blow your mind. How it will move from not just Lahaina and ashes, but to new states and new nations, and then travel across the United States of America and have voices that you haven't seen in a long time, or you maybe don't even remember or never knew. But how we come together as humanity, and how we stand up for truth, and how we stand up for what's right. I'll give you a brief update on Clear One. So technology that runs a lot of these meetings. I'll pull it over here. This technology, where did it go? Let's see if I can find that again. What did I do with it? Uh-oh. Did I just get rid of it? Here, I'll just pull it up real fast. So if you go to app.clear.one, you can create an account. Anyone can create an account. The decentralized side of this stuff is still coming, but you can basically set up conferences. Like you see 3 different conferences here that are running in real time, but you can set up your own conference or event. You can set up not just your own conferences, but your own projects. So let's say that, I won't go through details, but this is an example of how a country can actually run passports that come on board, or how you move things through a phase and how you have teams do things that are collaborative. Clear.one is a technology that I believe will help humanity to be able to not just use, what you're already used to with conferencing and voice, and let's say like Blue Jeans or Zoom or WebEx. It replaces all of those, but it does it in a private way where an individual can actually control their own data. So this is, and I won't actually jump into that. So you can go through and see, how many meetings were there, who attended the meetings, what are the recordings for the meetings or transcripts from the meetings. This is power that you don't even have with an advanced technology like Zoom, but it's a power technology where you can actually own it. And it's deeper than that. It's something that can actually be tied to a digital world. So that's one thing we want to announce, is that same technology that Clear has helped to build. And I would be remiss if I didn't remember Jerry Ulich, who dedicated almost a decade of his life and many millions of dollars to bring this technology forward, to simplify it. It directly competes with some of the biggest invest vendors that are out there. And then he gave it. He literally gave it, not just his time, but his efforts, his heart, and then his life to this cause. He worked so hard. And I remember just 2 or 3 hours before he passed away, him messaging me and saying, think about this. Most of you know me, and I've got a fire that's lit underneath me. He was lighting fires and sense of urgencies for even me. So I'm just grateful for all those that have helped to build this technology. But I'd like to report that the Clear One will be available to everyone until the new systems and the digital ecosystem are stood up. And we'll use this if needed, if wanted, to help manage some of the projects within the rebuilding of Lahaina. You're also going to see some wonderful things, not just around countries over the next week, but around freedom over these next couple weeks in a very large way. And I just would say stay tuned. So any other feedback or thoughts or comments before we wrap up today?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. It's good to hear your voice, Margaret. I can know you by your voice. Go ahead.
Thank you. So will Clear One be supported with Clear support?
Clear One, yeah, you can get support on it today. It's just some of the authentication stuff.
You hear that?
We're still in the process of getting Clear One to have a centralized authentication system moved over to a decentralized authentication system. So does that answer your question? I don't hear you, but that's okay, Mark. It's just good to hear your voice. I'm glad that you're still joining us and engaged. But please use it, and we'll work to continue the push forward there. Yes. The answer is yes. Any other questions or thoughts?
Yeah, Michael. I've been using Clear One for several months now. I really like it. I like the fact that I can see everybody who attended the meetings. I would love to be able to record. Is that a paid feature only, or
yeah? The record is wired up to decentralized storage, which, because the authentication's not wired up, it doesn't link it. So that's the answer there, if that makes sense.
Okay, but I love it. I really like it, and I use it for all of my meetings.
That's awesome. I use it for a chunk of them as well. I love it. There is an app for it, so you can go to Google and type in Clear One, and there's an app for, or actually it's there's a video. I want to say I don't remember the exact app. Wally, do you know what that is? I want to say it might be a video or a conference or something. Anyways, I know that there's a, say again?
I don't recall.
Okay. So
Michael, will there ever be an app on the marketplace? Because I don't use the Google feature.
There's actually a couple different apps within the Google Play Store. Within the marketplace for the Clear ecosystems, they're all there. I'll go to that. It's at clearos.app. And if you click on marketplace, you can kind of see the apps that are there. Now, we've had all of our apps already certified within the Google ecosystem, and then when they understand that it's all about decentralization, they kind of pull it. But let's see if I can find the particular one. Here, it's Clear Meat. That's what it is. So you can find Clear Meat within the Google Play Store. You can also find this Digital Life within the Google Play Store. But the rest of the decentralized apps are all within this ecosystem here. You can also see about 150,000 other apps, within the clearos.apps, or it's on your phone, it's at Clear Apps. So you can access them from either location, but really the right place to access it is actually from your mobile phone. So other questions or thoughts?
Michael, are there any, can you give us an update of the digital world and how that's developing?
Yeah, so everything that we talked about we'll wrap it up. Thank you. Everything that we talked about within the Hawaiian nation, that really is a subset of the digital world. So the digital world is basically enabling that and continuing the work that you're already used to. But instead of internal councils, it's basically going to build the councils for the Hawaiian nation. Instead of internal services, it'll enable the services for the Hawaiian nation. And then those will all basically be built on the actual infrastructure and technology that the digital world is actually built on. So, and it's not just, these nations, but there'll be other nations that continue to roll that out. Had some amazing meetings with not just, the Hawaiian ecosystem this last week, but even within the last 24 hours with some of the other countries that, even though we're physically not there, they're still pushing to move forward. So good question. Good question. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Well, I thank you all for your involvement and your time and your attention and for always showing up every week. I know that we've fragmented in 3 different conference rooms here. I'm grateful that people are respectful of the others. I know it's probably hard to keep following it, but we're going to wrap up by a song that we listened to last week, and there's reasons for it, but Lahaina by Jimmy Levy. Mm. Wonder why it's not playing.
Yeah. Hi.
We'll just log in and see if we can just play this real fast.
All right.
Hello.
Your name is Michael?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Lisa.
Hi, Lisa. You're on live with lots of people. No, but let me just say goodbye here, and then I'll come grab you if that's okay.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Are you together? Are you together?
Yes, I have a seat system that can be put up.
Okay, yeah.
All right, everybody. I'll go ahead and bounce, but appreciate all of you attending. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. Hi. How are you?
Good.
Thanks for letting me wrap up here.
Sure.
Lots of logouts. One more.